Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about a movie called Big Time Adolescence. This movie came out in 2020. You can find it on Hulu streaming service right now, and I recommend you go watch it because this movie is fantastic. This movie was written and directed by Jason Orley, and let me tell you, the writing and the directing for this film is just really, really solid. I don't know how many of you like John Green or read John Green books, but they're all, teenage level, young adult books. And they're really, really good. I love all of them. I've read them all like 3 times. And the cool thing about them is that they're so relatable, but they talk about things that aren't relatable. Like The Fault in Our Stars talks about cancer, but we relate to that because they're teenagers. This film is fantastic because it talks about a lot of the stuff that teenagers have to go through in a high school setting. And it talks about influences in a really interesting way because, when we're young, we all want to be cool, right? I mean, all of us are, we're young and we're impressionable. We all want to be somebody better than who we are, right? Like, we all have a role model. When you're younger, you look up to somebody else. And this movie plays with the idea that maybe your role model is awful. Maybe your role model is a drug addict, which happens a lot. This is a real life story that could absolutely happen, and I'm sure it has happened. But the basic plot is, this kid named Mo has, basically an older brother named Zeke. And, Mo looks up to Zeke, and he wants to be just like Zeke. But Zeke, smokes a lot of drugs and drinks a lot of alcohol and, goes to parties every night. And it really shows how a relationship can form that is absolutely not okay, but both sides of the equation think that it's okay. And I just want to talk about the acting real quick, but then I want to talk about the directing, because I think that, these actors are really good. They could have done anything they were told to do. But the directing and the writing was really where it was really solid. There were a couple complaints I have, and I'll get to those. But we had Pete Davidson as Zeke, and I love him. He's hilarious. I love all of his stand-up things. They're all hilarious. All of his sketch comedy stuff. You should go watch his sketch comedy. His sketch comedy is hilarious. And he plays Zeke, and, it's a role made for Pete Davidson. He's always good at that guy that's like, oh, okay, yeah, word. He's that kind of guy. And it works perfectly. I mean, obviously, if you throw him into a role that is supposed to be played by a teenager who is supposed to be a really awful adult, he's going to exceed. He's really good at that. And it was finally a good moment for him to step up and be like, all right, I'm going to lead this. And it worked. It worked really well. Pete Davidson's hilarious, and so was this movie. This movie was really funny, laugh out loud funny. There were times where I had to pause it because I just couldn't pay attention because I was laughing so hard. And Griffin Gluck as Mo, I've never heard of him. Maybe I think maybe I've seen him in a movie before, but maybe not. Maybe he's a completely regular guy. But he plays Mo, and he's a good kid. He's a solid, impressionable young child. And when he's young, he looks up to Zeke, and he's like, I want to be like him. He's really cool. I want to be cool. I want other people to look at me the way that I look at Zeke. And that's a bad idea because obviously Zeke is a drug addict, and, he can't hold a job, and it's really, really an awful relationship. And it's really awesome how they got it to work. I mean, in the very beginning, we see Mo as a young child looking up to Zeke because Zeke's dating Mo's sister. And, that's awesome how we can see the transition there. They have this whole scene where you could see them each getting older. And it looked really good. I understood, okay, time is passing. And the music choice for everything in this film, the music in this film is really, really on point. I really, really enjoyed the music choices. And if you listen to the lyrics, every song has something to do with what is happening in the film, which is really cool. A lot of directors are leaning towards doing that more often because, it's important. And it's a small thing that I really enjoy because a lot of people just sit there and be like, oh, this is pretty good music. But I'm like, what are the lyrics? What is it saying about the film? And it all related. It was all really, really cool. Make sure you check that out and make sure you're listening to the lyrics and the music. It's all really, really good. One thing that I did think was interesting was that in the beginning of the film, they showed the ending of the film, which happens in a lot of films. But I think what would have been even cooler than what they did was if they just kept going back and forth. Like, if they did in the beginning, they showed that, the cops came into the school and took Mo because Mo got in trouble for selling drugs in the school. But what would have been really cool is that they went back to where they met each other, and they went back and forth and back and forth. I think that would have been cool because that's how I would have wrote the book if there was a book written. I would probably go back and forth and back and forth. But I think it would have been really easy to do that in this film because they could have just changed Zeke's hair because Zeke dyed his hair at one point. So it would be really cool if we could see where we were in time based on the color of Zeke's hair. I think they could have played around with that and maybe even made it a little bit longer. I mean, the film was an hour and a half. There were some slow parts where I was like, okay, we need something to happen. And it would happen, but it was a little slow for the second act. Beginning of the third act was a little slow for me. But what could have picked it up was just this really fun back and forth they could have done. They didn't do it, and it was very sad. I thought maybe we were going to go there. I was like, yes, please. Then they didn't, which is fine. The movie's fantastic anyway. I just think that would have elevated my rating a little bit, was if we had that fun, playful back and forth through time thing that, directors are hesitant to do that now because they don't want to confuse their audience, and I get that. I totally get that. I agree. But this would have been a time where I think it would have been appropriate, and I think that audiences would not have been confused. I want to talk a little bit about the end of the film, where, Mo follows Zeke's advice, and, he finds a girl he likes and then eventually loses her. He finds a good job selling drugs, and then eventually gets caught and expelled from school. And it's really interesting to see that, obviously, all of Zeke's decisions are awful. And then 3 months later, after he got expelled, he goes to the drive-thru. Mo goes to the drive-thru, and he sees Zeke working there. He's like, "Oh my gosh, whoa!" And then they talk, and then, Mo realizes that Zeke is no farther in life than when he was when they first met, and he realizes that he doesn't want that. He doesn't tell Zeke because Mo's not an asshole, but when he drives away, that's the end of the scene. The end of the whole movie is Mo driving away from Zeke, and we see Zeke sit down in the background, and we know that, Mo's going to go on and do stuff that is better than what he has been recently doing. And I think that's important because we need to see progress. Because if they had just gotten back together and had fun and, they had still been buddies, the whole movie would have been pointless. But the point of the movie was that Mo learned not to trust Zeke because Zeke was a bad influence. And I think that a lot of teenagers should watch this. It says that it's rated R for mature, which it is mature. However, and I'm not advising that young children go see this. I'm saying that people that are at a young impressionable age, like, 14, maybe their parents should consider showing this film to them just to give them an example of what not to do, right? Because in the beginning, you're like, kids will be like, oh, I want to do that too. And then by the end, they'd be like, oh, if I do that, that's going to happen to me. And maybe the world will be better for it. I think it's a good learning tool. I think film is always a good learning tool. A lot of people are like, don't watch films, it ruins your kid's brain. No, not necessarily true. If you watch a film that has good life lessons in it, you're going to learn something from it. And I think that it's important that we show this film to people who are around the age of, 13 to 15. Because that's when the most impressionable. That's when they're going to be like, okay, I want to be with this person, I want to hang out with this person. That's when you really choose who your friend group is, especially for high school. And if you choose the wrong friends, the same thing could happen here. And if older people watch this, they could realize that they are the Zeke in the equation. They could realize, oh, maybe I should get off drugs. Maybe I should stop drinking alcohol every day. Because you don't want to end up working, a crappy job for the entirety of your life. You want to graduate. You want to go to college and all that stuff. And I think it's really important that this film teaches this to young children. And, obviously it's rated R and there's a lot of inappropriate themes. But, I'm sure there's film out there that would be more appropriate. But this just really felt right. I feel like this is a very good learning tool, a very good learning movie. And you all should go watch it. I really enjoyed it. I really, really had fun with this movie. I didn't have to take a break or anything. It was short. It was succinct. And I really liked it. I liked the acting. The acting was phenomenal. The directing, the writing was all good. The music was really, really good. And I'm going to give this film an A. I didn't give it an A+, just because I thought that there were some parts that were kind of slow that really didn't need to be in there. And I think the directing could have been a little bit better, where they could have decided Maybe to switch up the timeline a little bit, but still an A is really good in my book. So make sure you go watch that. And make sure you subscribe and like and leave a comment down below for anything you want me to watch. I will watch it and I will review it. And it'll be online sometime within the month. So make sure you do that, guys.